Welcome back to the Center for Equus Coaching. We're a community of coaches who believe that partnering with horses can help transform the way we connect with ourselves, others, and the world around us. I'm Travis Stock, one of the instructors here at the Center for Equus Coaching, and I've got another Equus Coaching Master Facilitator to introduce you all to. Martina Hodges-Schell is an international member of our herd, joining us from the UK. She works at the intersection of design and technology, two industries navigating enormous uncertainty and change right now, especially with the rise of AI. Her work centers on helping organizations create the conditions for real creativity to thrive. And she brings Equus coaching into that world to help leaders get out of their heads and back into their bodies, reconnecting with their instincts and finding a more sustainable way to lead. So, without further ado, Martina, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Travis. It's such a joy to join you on the podcast.
Let's start with your journey to becoming an Equus coach. Like, how did you find out about the Center for Equus Coaching and what made you sign up for it, especially as somebody that's in the UK?
Absolutely. Do you know what? I had to look up how long ago I read about this particular program. And I was in the US. I was reading Oprah magazine, and there was an article about Coel's work from Martha Beck.
Uh-huh.
And I had those moments, I was on the plane, I was reading, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea this existed, but this is exactly, all the puzzle pieces falling into place from my passions in my life. And I thought, I must find out about this. I must experience this. That was in 2013. So I Googled and tried to figure out, so where can I experience this? And I realized, okay, San Diego seemed one of the few places, like one of the few of the early coaches that were doing the work. And so I lodged that in the back of my mind, but San Diego wasn't on my flight path. So it took me to 2019 to actually be in San Diego. I called Renee and I said, I'm in town for a couple of days. And she managed to make a little space in, ad hoc in her calendar. And so I went to Ramona to Featherheart Ranch with her and had my first Equus coaching session. I thought, wow, this is absolutely incredible. And we completely leapfrogged the conversation about, hey, so how was this sort of new Equus coaching experience for you? And leapfrogged straight to, so when are you signing up to become a coach? Because it felt it really felt, this is it. This is really, this feels very much like a calling.
I love that so many of us have stories like that where we maybe experienced it once or heard about it once and we were like, I need that. What's that? I need to be around that.
Definitely. I was one of those children, sort of people who inexplicably was completely obsessed with horses. My parents are absolutely terrified of horses. I wasn't born into a horse family or, anything like that. No one around me was into horses, but I was really sort of nagging my parents to, oh, please, can I have riding lessons when I was little? And that lifelong love for horses was always there. Obviously, my work went another way, but it turned up in the coaching space, just as a leader, as a consultant as well, helping other people figure out, how to do this stuff. And all of a sudden, I saw a bridge for, how I can bring horses into my work life and how it all really makes sense together as well. Although they seem so, like completely different bubbles, completely different realms. I felt what horses can teach us is exactly the kind of leadership we need to be great creative leaders, great empowering leaders that that can inspire high performing teams. Who knew? I was really surprised to figure that one out.
Yeah, who knew? I think a lot of people look at us and go, wait, what? How is a horse going to help me with that? And yet you're so right. I'd love to hear from that first experience where Renee offered you an Equus coaching session. What did you learn about your own leadership, or what did you learn about your own self that made it click for you?
It was really interesting because, as a horse person, I came with also this expectation of course, I need to know how to do this really well. I need to step into this round pen and I need to perform at sort of peak performance, right? Do this absolutely perfectly. Really showed up all my personal stuff about how I show up as a person in and out of work. As,
horses have a way of doing that.
Exactly. I'm quite the perfectionist. but then, it felt like something that I should be good at, right? But it's obviously a completely different context. And it was beautiful timing as well, because it was, the reason I was there was I was on a way to actually to a women in design leadership retreat. And I had just quit my 25 year career as in other people's organizations to set up my own business. And all of a sudden, the world was my oyster to think like, oh my goodness, I could do this as well. That was just the point of possibilities, opening up new possibilities, new ways of thinking about what I could be doing with myself and my future, rather than working within the constraints of, what corporate business expects of me and my time. But on the other hand, so I was in the round pen with Featherheart, the namesake of the round, beautiful mare, and she was racing around. And I was thinking, it was a hot day. Thinking, I just want her to calm down. And I had no way to slow her down, because I was in such a heightened state of, always rushing, always running, always needing to do, as you do when you're in a busy leadership role. And it gave me a moment to reflect. And Renee was asking, so, what would you rather do? And I thought, it's really obvious. I want her to not need to be running around like this in the heat here. There's no need for that. So we had a lovely conversation around how might that show up in my life, and where do I not need to be doing all that? But I need to, I need to achieve, I need to do. Very much in the, at that sort of burning yourself out space of working.
Sounds like Featherheart gave you a really nice external mirror of kind of how maybe you were approaching leadership and work, as sort of like running yourself ragged, just running around, moving around, and feeling like that's what you have to do in that space,
Yeah.
and never really questioning, is there another way? Or do I actually have to do that? Or am I just patterned to do that?
Exactly, because the expectation is there, right? Whatever you give, it gets gladly taken. No one's going to stop you from, doing more. But the question of, is that actually necessary? It often feels like it's expected, right? But not setting your own boundaries and trying to figure out, how can I bring some sort of balance back into my work and personal life, or just how I show up at work, how much do I bring to work or not, as it were. That was never a question. I never thought that was even a possibility to question, how much or not. Do I need to be running? Just at that time, just very briefly, I had a colleague very much in tune with healthy living, with her body. I was definitely living in my head and hadn't noticed my body in years at that point. I remember her scheduling some time in my work calendar to actually go and see a physiotherapist for a problem I've been having for ages, because I was sharing, like, on a work trip, someone was like, yeah, this thing is still bothering me, but when do I ever have time to stop and actually look after myself?
Yeah.
And it was very apropos, the session with Renee and Featherheart.
That's what I love about horses. For horses, this whole concept of living from here up, never asking yourself the question of, should I be running? Should I be hustling? Should I be putting all of myself in? They just offer that model of returning back to, like, you can stay connected to yourself, to your herd, to the now, the present moment, without needing to hustle all the time for everything. But it's cool when they also give us a reflection back of what we might look like running around there, wasting energy. Like, you think of them as like mirroring like the ideal of how you should be, which is to be resting. But no, that horse was actually reflecting back how you were approaching things for a while.
And how enlightening, right? How illuminating to see how I actually show up versus how I think I show up.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's even more important, as I was sort of setting up in the intro, like, so much of your field is in transition, is in uncertainty and change in big ways. And I think a lot of people might believe that now they need to hustle even more and put more of themselves in, run themselves even more ragged to continue proving their worth in the age of AI taking over certain tasks and things like that. It sounds to me like you are actually like what horses have taught you and what you're bringing with Equus coaching is actually meeting the moment currently and the need that's happening right now so that people can explore, how do I want to engage with this uncertainty and change that's afoot?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I find, on a work level, absolutely, it's such uncertainty on so many levels, right? With AI, with, tech is also going through so many layoffs off the back of that, and other economic sort of pressures. So there's a lot of existential anxiety and stress there as well. Um, and yeah, trying to figure out how do you engage with all of that, and how do you keep up with all of that. It's unsustainable to stay in this sort of level of stress and anxiety, and just rushing as well. You can't keep up with
Hmm.
it. I don't think it's humanly possible. And obviously, the pace of change with AI, I think we're all experiencing that. Every other day you blink and it can do something else, and what you thought you just grasped is already old news. So it's changed on so many levels, right? And it's
Yeah.
exhausting, and I think we're not made for that. So I feel the horse work is really meeting this moment, at bringing us back to ourselves, to our bodies, to checking in with, to rediscovering sometimes, so just checking in with yourself. So, what do I actually need? How can I get back to ground myself and honor myself and figure out some boundaries within that as well? Or how do I find just some comfort, just a new way of dealing with this just accelerated level of change and stress? I love that with horses. They don't just, not just to notice when we're in these moments, we might not even notice what's wrong or what we're doing. That might not be helpful, but also a great safe space to try out different things and see how they feel in your
Yeah.
body, right? And how they work
Yeah.
for us. And I think that's a fantastic way to try and figure out, in this unprecedented sort of moment, gosh, what can we do for ourselves? Uncertainty doesn't feel great, even when it's just a work medium, right? As a creative, I work with uncertainty, and I have a great approach to that. I know I can deal with that, but this is a type of uncertainty that feels very different and existentially worrisome, right? So, what can we do about that? We might have never thought about tools for how we set ourselves up in that kind of environment.
Hmm. It makes sense that these would be like kind of the lessons you want to be passing along and sharing with others through the
Mm.
Equus coaching, because it sounds to me like Equus coaching found you in one of those moments too, when there was a
That's
lot of
true.
uncertainty. You had left your career, you had
Mm.
started out like in a different direction. There
Mm.
was so many more possibilities, but there was also
Mm.
so many other
Yeah.
unpredictable things that could happen. And so it makes sense to me that these would be the continuation of the lessons you took
Mm.
on, that the horses
Yeah.
brought into your life, was navigating that uncertainty. And I love that you highlighted that piece of, it's not just that the horses will show us some of the ways in which we're getting in our own way, some of which ways in which our patterns are creating things we didn't intend for them to create, but
Yeah.
they also give us that space to experiment and try new things. So we actually get to take advantage of the creative process in when things are uncertain and when things are not locked down. There's so much actual creativity we can engage with and to experiment in the moment and get feedback from another being. It's like, what other more perfect place could there be to find what else could be if what was certain is no longer,
Mm.
finding what's coming towards you or where you're headed. What a great place to do it than with a 1,000-pound animal there that's going to give you some clear feedback on how it's going.
Absolutely. Or with my horse, that's 1,500 pounds.
Ooh, big one.
Yeah. So, quite imposing, but also what a safe space, even if for someone who's perhaps unfamiliar with horses, it might feel that, oh, that might sound quite like an imposing question or a worrisome question. It's like, it's a really safe space to try the stuff out and actually get unfiltered feedback. I also find, working with a lot of leaders, having been a leader myself, you don't often get the generosity of unfiltered feedback. People
Hmm.
often varnish what what you hear back, basically. And this is a wonderful experience, I think, because we rarely get to get feedback without agenda, without narrative, without politics. And in our work life.
That's so true. As people rise up in their they have more
Mm.
power because of their
Mm.
role. Of course, people are going to hold back information from
Mhm.
you, say what you want to hear, because that power plays into their lives and they have
Mhm.
agendas too. And so you're so right that we start to get to a place as leaders where we don't get clear, non-judgmental, honest feedback on how it's
Mhm.
going. And I've seen so many leaders go through that process where they heard from the horse what their employees were not willing to say to them,
Mhm. Totally.
and they got to see through just the role they were playing into actually what's their impact on the external environment. How are they showing up, and how does that shape the space? And horses are just so sensitive and great at giving feedback on how that's going.
Yeah, I'm seeing exactly the same thing in my work with my clients.
Okay, so you clearly buy into this work. You actually had a
Mhm.
great experience with Renee. It was like, let's
Mhm.
sign up. What was it like for you as a person that's an international coach coming to being a part of this training?
I absolutely loved it. I'll preface it with obviously, like working in tech, where doing the work that I do, I've worked a lot with West Coast companies, with international companies. So for me, it wasn't a question of being on Zoom. My last office had 20 offices around the globe. Like I had a team, spanning from Sydney to San Francisco. So I wasn't concerned about the concept of joining online sessions in a different time zone. But it worked out so well. I really, really enjoyed it. So for people who are listening to this and might be curious about this, it's a year plus of online classes with 3 on-sites. I was super excited that I had an excuse to travel. So I really, really enjoyed that. I just made it extra hard for all of us because I started this during the pandemic and none of us knew how
COVID
difficult it
group.
would of course, I'm sure it was a big enough challenge, a logistics challenge, just in the US, right? But obviously, from here, none of us could have expected how long and how iterative the sort of travel bans would be, and continually changing sort of parameters of who can go when, where, what, how. Uh,
Mm.
I remember contemplating a 14-day quarantine in Mexico to get to my first on-site. Obviously, for other people listening and contemplating this from abroad, that will hopefully not be another challenge. It worked really, really well. I joined the sessions in California. I really enjoyed being able to come over. I just loved how supportive you all were, all the instructors were, the institute was around, coming from abroad, and that this is much more of a, much more effort in terms of being able to come to an on-site, just in terms of travel effort, but really worth it. Really, really enjoyed it. Made so many friends for life, such an amazing network of people I've met along the way. So many partner ranches, not we call them stables here. So many partner ranches to collaborate with. So yeah, not just the on-sites, but also doing sessions in LA, in the Bay Area, New York. Absolutely wonderful.
It's wonderful to have a skill set that you can take around the world and introduce people to. All that it's required is horses and stables. I think one of the things you're highlighting is that it's not just a training center where you learn the skill. Part
Mm.
of what you also gained from this was community, was a herd, was a
Mm.
belonging sense around a shared thing. And I think it's important to highlight that because we aren't just a training center that trains on a skill.
Mm.
We are also a community with shared values that are learning together how to bring something we're all passionate about, something, sharing some of this equine facilitated learning with the world because of how it's impacted us and because of how we know it can impact others as well, especially in a world that feels pretty uncertain, in a world
Mm.
that can feel a little out of control at times, at a world that is moving at such a pace of change that most of us are like, I don't know if I can handle it. And yet,
Mm.
horses help us anchor back into the moment, help us
Mm.
get really present, to look at our own patterns, our own feelings, what this current world is bringing up in us, and allowing us to find how do we want to navigate it and get to try out little new ways of navigating it and seeing how it feels right there
Mm.
in the moment with a horse.
And yeah, to your point, more relevant than ever, I feel at the moment. Well, and I think prolonged moment. It's not just a short moment in
Yeah.
time, unfortunately. But I'm also feeling with that whole, especially the digital side of all this uncertainty and all this overwhelm, I guess. Yeah, I think we'll all be craving more of these, real connections in nature, because so much more of our lives has been moved online and so much more has been made artificially with technology, right? With AI, feels like getting us back to our humanity a little bit in this whole digital
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. 100%. Now, that's a big part of what you like to offer with Equus
Mhm.
coaching is helping leaders get back into their own humanity, to not just be living from the neck up, to
Yeah.
get in their bodies, to get into their instincts. Do you have any stories from working with clients that come to mind that are like helpful to help someone understand how you have brought Equus coaching into a leader's life and how it's transformed them?
Yeah, I'm thinking of one where they arrived with, "Oh, I'll try it out. I'm not sure what to expect, but let's see." And so, a little bit curious, not really sure about how this could possibly help. And they explained to me, this piece of feedback that kept showing up about how they show up as a leader, how they motivate their team, how would they motivate the team with positivity, with rather than coming across in a sort of more directive way. And so they were explaining this to me. This had been, ongoing feedback over many, many years. And it's just, so they thought, okay, let me try this out and see what we could possibly be doing about this topic here with this horse. And a couple of minutes later, they were like, "Oh my goodness, I'm feeling it. This is so different to, I've been intellectualizing this for years and years, trying to figure out sort of, you know, how to rationalize this, how to approach this in my head. What I'm realizing is, what I'm feeling in my body is, well, telling this horse means nothing. Like I can't reason with him with words. He doesn't understand at all what I'm trying to tell him to do. But connecting into my, so how do I motivate him to do what I want? Was all about, coming with energy, and what kind of energy do I need to be able to do that? They were absolutely delighted that after trying a few things out, the horse was moving in the direction they wanted at the speed they wanted, slowing down, stepping up a gear, going, changing direction. And they're like, "Oh my goodness, this is it. This is the feeling." They were saying like, "I get it now." They're having a real light
Mm.
bulb moment. And I, as the coach, was doing very little, next to nothing, while they were just exploring, playing in the round pen, after telling me how deep seated, how foundational, this is how they are, and this is how they always have been, this is how they've been brought up. Has been a topic that has been sort of following them around their entire life. And they were curious about, not being able to imagine what a different approach might actually be. Um, I thought it was absolutely incredible. So, in terms of, you know, maybe a shift off within 10 minutes, they went, "Oh my god, this is it." And we had a we had a conversation afterwards, and they were saying, "Do you know what, this is not just changing things in the office, this is also changing how I show up with my children, and they're reacting really differently to me." And they were absolutely amazed about having been able to, it didn't even feel like, having to work something out or address something, or, like deep rooted. It felt like it was readily available to them to experience, to understand that shift of, not this, like that. And that works really well.
So beautiful as a story of helping kind of tap back into the way that the body learns, the way
Mm,
like you can learn from the feeling, not just the memorization of facts up
mm,
here in the mind. And I think one of our gifts as humans is our verbal communication skills, our language that we have. And yet we get so reliant on that being directive at the language of our words. And yet even for every human, our words land in different ways based on where their emotional state in that moment, their fears, their agendas, all of that. So sometimes it's our language is actually limited in some ways to actually be able to get across. And I think we forget how much more information exists in our body language, in our energy, in our emotional state in which we're communicating, and all of the subtext underneath the words. And when you put a leader in with an animal that doesn't speak English, and they have to learn about the other parts of their dialogue, the other parts of their communication that are below the words, I think there's so much power in being able to give someone the time to feel and
Mm-hmm.
get feedback on when something is off versus feel when it's aligning with what you're trying to create. And there's something about that kind of learning that happens lower in the body than up in here in the mind that is really powerful for a lot of people.
It's so true. I feel like that shows up in almost every session I do with people. These aha moments, because we don't often have an environment where we can experience that, right? That's why I find Equus coaching is so powerful.
Yeah. And even as a coach, because I do coaching like this over like on a Zoom call with somebody more of
Mm-hmm.
like a telehealth, and we can talk about the concepts of what are some other ways you could approach something when I'm working with a leader. And yet I always know in those moments, man, I wish I was there with a horse with a person, because then they could actually experience this rather than just conceptualizing new approaches. Because
Mm-hmm.
as in that example you were sharing, like your person went from not even being able to imagine there was another option to embodying that other option within 10 minutes. It's like a shortcut. It
Mm-hmm.
speeds it up and allows people to really get to that clarity in a different way than maybe sort of standard life coaching or executive coaching can.
Absolutely. And I find, especially when I'm thinking of my executive coaching, especially in the workplace, the stories we tell ourselves about how we show up and how well we do are very, very different to what actually happens in reality and how other people are actually receiving that. I really feel like it's horses are a beautiful bullshit barometer as well, so we can cut to the crap, through the crap, to the real issues.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, we could be talking about this for a very long time before, if at all, we get to the core. If the person doesn't feel like getting to the core, we might never know what the underlying challenge really is, rather than staying at the surface in the office.
Yeah, it's so true. The horses don't care about that person's title, about their story about themselves, about what their good intentions were. Can't conceptualize any of that. And so what they respond to is what they feel from you. And so you're right, it does cut through all of the other humanness stuff and just really gets to the core of what's really playing out for that person. And then that person gets to reflect on, is that what I want to continue creating by continuing this pattern? Or is it worth experimenting with other patterns or other habits or other approaches so that I can actually see if I could better get to what I'm trying to get to rather than continuing to play out the same pattern like that leader was having, where he kept
Yeah.
getting the same feedback about how how they were motivating people, and yet maybe there's another way that actually works even better. Do you have any current offerings or anything that you're putting out into the world that people, if like any future upcoming workshops that you want to highlight?
Yeah, a couple of things. Actually, the weather has just turned. You and I were talking about Seattle and London do very similar weather. It has
Uh-huh.
just brightened up.
Uh-huh.
So I am in wild creation mode at the moment, in terms of taster sessions as well. The people are curious and want to learn more about Equus coaching. I do that together with another UK-based Equus coach. And we're actually having a session tomorrow to meet at a new stable. So I'm
Oh,
really
so
looking forward to that.
exciting.
So yeah, so we should have some news on taster sessions in the next couple of weeks on our website, and also putting on a couple of different retreats later in the year for people, perhaps leaders, who want to work on their own growth, on their own sort
Mm.
of topics. So one that is focused on recharging, having a moment to breathe, step back, reconnect with yourself and your purpose. And the other is the transformative, I'm in that sort of creation mode. I'm in that curiosity of what's next for me in my life, not necessarily just in my career. Often that doesn't just mean, what's the next role or the next sort of stepping stone in my career, but maybe that's a change. Maybe I want to set up my own thing. Maybe I'm transitioning into a whole different life chapter. So transitions of any time is very much focused on the, imagining your ideal future and figuring out how we're moving towards that. So a couple of those coming up. Apart from that, I also do one-on-one sessions where people can reach out when we organize a time. And for executive teams, for leadership teams, I do bespoke retreats that, depending on what topics they have, whether it's around creating strategy, teaming, actually recharging as well, more a focus point than usual, or just having a fun time away from the office together. We might learn things about ourselves we didn't expect.
Oh, beautiful.
They can also reach out to me about that. So they're always bespoke. The two never look the same. It always depends on what the team wants to do.
Beautiful. I love the highlighting of like the topics that you're really honing in on, that recharging and then that creativity space of what's next. I think those are perfect for our current moment, that sometimes we have to focus in on the recharging, the self-care, the gathering the energy we need in order to create the next thing. And then other times we're ready to create something. And so I think those are such they're powerful topics just in general for the moment, but they're actually so supportive of each other as we all kind of navigate this world. So kudos to you for finding some really great topics to support people with and help them navigate the current moment. If people wanted to follow along and find out when those are happening, where do they find you online?
Absolutely. My website is northshore.studio, like South Sea. And on LinkedIn, there's only one of me, so my last name is quite good SEO. I usually post stuff there as well. But my website has all the details.
Great. I'll make sure that all your website's down in the description of this video so people can easily find you. Thank you so much, Martina, for joining me, for sharing about your work in the world. I think you're really honing in on some really important topics to support all of us, including leaders within organizations, for how to navigate a tricky and uncertain world. So thank you for bringing your work into the world, for taking what we taught you at the Center for Equus Coaching and making it real for other people out there so that they can benefit from it as well.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Travis. It was such a joy to join you.
If you've been listening and you're interested in this Equus coaching thing, go find us on our website at equuscoach.com. There are listings of personal development workshops and Equus coach trainings that we are leading throughout the year. Also, if you're interested in finding an Equus coach to experience this, we have a directory on our website where you can find Equus coaches in your area. So whether you're in the UK like Martina or you're in Seattle like me, you can find Equus coaches throughout the world who are offering this work. So again, that's at equuscoach.com.